What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here, live for, I'm going to call it a NFL free agency leftovers discussion. So in this video, how this is going to work is, it's going to be my thoughts and analysis on the pickups from about Friday, March 19th, I believe, to today, March 22nd. So I'm going to break down all of the free agency moves that I deem to be at least somewhat important in this video from March 19th through March 22nd, aka the leftovers, because I did not do an individual breakdown for each one of those days. So I'm treating this as a full breakdown for all of those days. This past weekend, Monday, Tuesday, so all those days combined. Today, we've actually had quite a few signings, which is interesting. A couple massive signings. Tehran Armstead signing with the Miami Dolphins. And then on top of that, earlier today, Zadarius Smith signing with the Minnesota Vikings. So before we get started and before I break down all of the signings that have happened over the last few days, make sure that you do Gronk spike that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more BLV just like this. And Gronk spike that notification bell for the latest upload to be notified when I go live next. Probably tomorrow, the next day I go live, will be the quarterback tier list video, as you guys did hit the 100 likes for the NFC tier list. So that means I will be breaking down the starting quarterbacks and putting them all into a separate tier. That will probably be tomorrow, at some point tomorrow. But today we're going to break down the free agency leftovers. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know how you're feeling. Let's say what's up to the people in the chat. Nicholas Gill says, hey Mitch, what's going on, Nick? Racer the Pacer 50 says, hello, what's up? Natasha says, hi everybody, hope you all had a great day. Please remember to Gronk spike the like button. It helps out the channel. Thank you. Steeler Nation is in the chat. Bodo is in the chat. Hopefully you're feeling all right, Steeler Nation. Hopefully you get to 100%, buddy. Bodo, what's going on? He says, sorry. He's saying sorry to Steeler Nation. Those Steeler fans sticking together. Jake, what's going on? Sing, what's up? Thank you guys for joining the chat, and let's get to the news, all right? If you guys haven't already, you can check out the BLV on social media. You can follow me on Twitter, at Mitch Milani on Twitter. You can follow the Bottom Line View on Instagram, at the Bottom Line View. You can follow the Discord if you want to become a deeper member of the channel. You could join the Discord. It is absolutely free. Its link is in the description. We have over 300 people in there. Some of the biggest BLVers around. Some big personalities that talk football and other things. So if you're interested in that, join the Discord. Link is in the description. Okay. What's up, Hugo? How you doing, man? I'm doing pretty good. Okay. So I'm going to try to go through this pretty good pace, okay? So let's start off with Tehran Armstead. Got it all on my phone right here. Armstead signed a 5-year deal worth $87.5 million, including $43.37 million guaranteed, sources tell ESPN. So Armstead has been one of the key targets of free agency, one of the guys that I thought would go instantly off the market day one of free agency. I thought he was going to be a guy that was heavily targeted, but it looks like maybe he was heavily targeted. Maybe he took his time making his decision. Ultimately, his decision is to sign with the Miami Dolphins. So the Miami Dolphins have signed Tehran Armstead, and this was actually my projection for Tehran Armstead. When he entered as a free agent, I predicted him to belong and go to the Miami Dolphins. And the reason was I think he fits the system quite well. Obviously, it's a massive need for the Miami Dolphins, getting a left tackle that can protect Tua. And that is absolutely essential because Tua, as we've seen over the last couple years, he's not exactly the most mobile guy in the world, so he's not going to be able to avoid all these sacks and things. And having a premier left tackle is such a difference maker for an offensive line. It can make a weak unit an average unit. It can make an average unit a good unit, a good unit a great unit. So upgrading that left tackle position, oftentimes the most valuable of the offensive line positions. Now, the interesting thing is that Tua is a lefty, so it's slightly different in that regard. But left tackle, Tehran Armstead, I think has been one of the premier tackles in football over the past about 5 to 6 seasons. At the end of that run with Drew Brees, he was essentially, one of the top 3 left tackles in the game. You would put him alongside the names of David Bakhtiari and Trent Williams, and I think Armstead's still in that elite category. I'm not sure he is in his prime anymore, but he's still really good. And as we've seen with a lot of tackles over the past decade plus, they have this capacity to play for a very long time and to be able to withstand the test of time and to be able to play until they're almost 40 years old. I mean, Andrew Whitworth, Jason Peters, some of these guys have been able to last the test of time and be able to play well at a high level for a long time. I believe Armstead is about 29 years old, so he's not that old. So they signed him to a 5-year contract. If he goes through that whole 5-year contract, he would be about 34, which as far as I'm concerned, is still a decent age for a tackle. Obviously, tackle and other positions, a little bit different in terms of needing youth at the position. Oftentimes, offensive linemen that gain experience and stay healthy, that have already that peak athleticism, can really play for a long time. See a Jason Peters. So Armstead, I believe, is one of those guys. In terms of his run, pass block ability, I would say he's been more known for his pass blocking ability, just given where he's played. That's New Orleans. But I do think that generally the Saints offensive linemen have been underrated as run blockers. He has enough athleticism to fit into this zone blocking heavy scheme. The Saints did a little bit of everything there in the run game, and I feel like he can pull off anything. He can work in any system, and he's a premier left tackle. He really has no flaws. The only flaw you could really look at is potentially health. That's about it. Maybe consistent health over the past couple of years, which has kept him from being the absolute top of the top the last couple of years at the All-Pro level, but he's still playing at a Pro Bowl level, let's call it. So that is a huge, massive upgrade at one of the most important positions on a football team, the left tackle for the Miami Dolphins. Armstead, I don't really care about the money. It's a home run regardless because he's going to make your team from a pass blocking and run blocking perspective much better at your team's biggest need to protect your young quarterback. I do like what the Dolphins have been able to do on the offensive line. They have made that offensive line better. Their offensive line definitely has improved from this offseason, signing Connor Williams as well at the guard position. So I think the Dolphins finally are addressing this line, not just with minor moves, but with major cash. And that's also nice to see. Thank you guys for joining here. That was our first breakdown of our first free agent, Tehran Armstead. If you're enjoying so far, don't forget to Gronk spike that like button, guys. Get in the chat and let me know how you're doing and how you're feeling. I know we've had a lot of people live recently. Hopefully we can get these numbers up for today's stream. If you're not sure, make sure that you do share this stream to your friends. Maybe they want to hear about their team's free agency signings. All right, the next one is a trade. The Cleveland Browns traded Case Keenum, their backup quarterback from last year, to the Buffalo Bills for a 2022 7th-round pick. This happened a couple days ago, but I do think it's worth talking about. Obviously, any quarterback move is worth discussing. I look at Case Keenum as a good backup quarterback. I think Case Keenum can come in if your starter is hurt, if your starter is not playing well. He can come in and he can win a couple games, and he can definitely give a stability to that position. I would probably place him within the top 10 backup quarterbacks in the NFL. And the Bills have certainly put at the top of their priority list backup quarterback. That is certainly something that they have definitely paid attention to, because they had Mitchell Trubisky last year. That was a premier backup quarterback as far as I'm concerned. And maybe because of Josh Allen playing the way that he does, he's a little bit reckless, right? He's a massive part of their offense because he runs the ball and passes the ball. I do believe that having a premier backup for somebody like Josh Allen is a premier addition, because if Allen misses a few games, sure, you're not going to get the same production as you would from Josh Allen, but at least you give yourself a solid floor for a good football team. A big thing with great football teams and contenders like Buffalo is it's important to have good backups, because you don't want to lose a few games with a bad backup if your guy gets hurt. Let's say Allen goes down for the month of November. He's out for 4 weeks, right? Case Keenum is good enough to win versus most bad teams and average teams in the NFL, considering how much better the Bills are than everybody else. That's just my opinion. If you plug Case Keenum in, he can beat the bad teams if they're on your schedule for you, and then you can pick up another couple wins. If you lose all those games, you have a bad backup, you lose 4 games straight, that might kick you out of the playoffs in a tough AFC. That might lose you the AFC East. That might lose you the number 1 seed. So these things are critical throughout a season for a contending team. I don't think it really matters too much for a bad team to have a great backup quarterback, but for a good team, to me it does matter, because positioning in the playoffs and seeding in the playoffs could potentially be the difference between you going to the Super Bowl, winning the Super Bowl, or not. So Case Keenum gets traded to the Buffalo Bills. And like I said, that was a 2022 7th round draft pick to the Browns. And basically what happened here is the Browns moving on from Baker Mayfield. That has yet to happen. We don't know where he's going yet. But moving on from Baker Mayfield, they brought in Deshaun Watson. So Case Keenum was kind of like a replica of Baker Mayfield, right? He was a lesser Baker Mayfield in a way. Well, they bring in Jacoby Brissette, who I guess they may feel is more of a lesser version of Deshaun Watson, although there are not as many similarities as there are with Case Keenum and Baker Mayfield, which might be a shot at Baker Mayfield. I don't know. But you get the point there. So they're changing starters. They're changing backups. They signed Jacoby. Maybe they feel like Jacoby's an upgrade, a younger guy, and maybe a good locker room presence to have Deshaun Watson. That quarterback room is a nice one to have, maybe, potentially. That's how they feel, at least. So they move on from Case Keenum, and the Bills scoop him up. I like that move for the Bills, just to get themselves a top 10 backup quarterback for whenever or if Josh Allen gets hurt. The next move, as I just stated, the Browns picked up their own backup quarterback, Jacoby Brissette. So Jacoby Brissette, new backup quarterback for Deshaun Watson. No longer Case Keenum will be the backup quarterback. I feel like Jacoby Brissette is no longer looked at as a prospect to be a starter. I think there was a day where we thought Jacoby could actually be a competent starter, and he did basically have one season to prove himself as a starter with the Colts the year after Andrew Luck left, and he went 7-9 or whatever. He had an okay year there. I mean, he wasn't awful or anything like that, but it just showed that he's maybe not a starter, but more of like a decent backup with some skills. He's got some mobility skills where he can take some quarterback sneaks and short yardage runs and do some things with that. He also has a pretty big arm and decent mobility. And like I've heard from his time in New England and his time in Miami, it's just continuously teammates like the guy. He's a good guy in the locker room. He's been on Super Bowl teams, so that certainly helps. And just overall somebody that can be a backup for you and start a couple of games if you need him to, like he did for Miami or like he's done for the Colts, and be competent. He's not going to be special, but he could be competent. So Jacoby Brissette to the Browns, basically replacing Case Keenum as their backup quarterback. The next move is La'el Collins to the Cincinnati Bengals. Collins from the Cowboys to the Bengals. Practically, this contract is the same one that he had with Dallas. It's just over more years. I do really love what the Bengals have done for Joe Burrow. Just protecting Joe Burrow up front, getting offensive linemen from guard Alex Kappa to center / guard Ted Karras to right tackle Collins. Now they pair him up with Jonah Williams on the opposite side, and all of a sudden you have a very, very formidable offensive line up front for Joe Burrow to protect Joe Burrow and to open up the run game for Joe Mixon. I think the Bengals, they saw that their priority this free agency was the offensive line, very much like the Chiefs last year, right? And the Chiefs' offensive line improved greatly with all the additions that they made this past season. The Bengals are expecting to take that similar jump with their offensive line to therefore maximize their quarterback, maximize their skill positions, and maximize their offense. And looking at it now, the Bengals could very well lean into and carry over the success and the momentum that they had from the playoffs into the regular season this year in terms of their offensive firepower and production. And they're going to be one of the toughest offenses to stop because their most crippling feature a year ago was the ability to get pressure after Joe Burrow. Well, you put Collins on the right side, who is probably a probably in a top 10 conversation for right tackle when he's healthy. You put him there, and now all of a sudden, Joe Burrow has two pretty good tackles, and you've got a pretty good offensive line overall. So I think Cincinnati is going to greatly benefit from that. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to replicate their Super Bowl appearance from a year ago, but getting a right tackle is looking to improve your team in the biggest area that they were not very good last year, which is exactly what I like. So that was their greatest need. It was a 3-year contract that lasts through 2024 for Collins, by the way. And like I said, Collins has had some issues with health and things of that nature, which has been inconsistent throughout his career, which has led to inconsistent play throughout his career. But I think when he's on the field, he is one of the best, most talented tackles in the NFL. And he'll be motivated, I feel, to prove himself coming off this contract, to prove that he was worth it and to protect Joe Burrow. And Burrow has this way about him to get the best out of players around him. And that very well could be the case with somebody like Collins, who's maybe lacked a little bit of motivation there in Dallas. So Joe Burrow gets his right tackle in Collins. The next move, I think I've touched on this already, so I'm just going to quickly talk about it. But the Robert Woods trade from a few days ago, Robert Woods was traded. Titans traded a 2023 sixth round pick to the Rams for Robert Woods. The Titans trading that 2023 sixth round pick for Robert Woods. Now, I like this move for the Titans. I think what they've done this offseason, they have upgraded their receiving core. What I like about it is Robert Woods is similar to A.J. Brown in a way where he's got some physicality and he's good over the middle of the field. He's physical. He's good after the catch, and he can do the gritty things really well, but I think that Robert Woods is also different from A.J. Brown. Obviously, he's smaller. He's not a gigantic human being like A.J. Brown, and I do feel he's quicker. He can function in those shorter areas of the football field, run those short routes, and get open and make plays. He's also really good in the screen game. He's a really good run blocker. He's a Mike Vrabel wide receiver. He's like that Patriot type of throwback Troy Brown-esque player where he's kind of good at everything, but he's not necessarily great at anything in particular. But that's exactly what you're getting with Robert Woods. Now, there are concerns with Robert Woods, which is why he only got a sixth round pick in the trade, and people were wondering. His contract is still pretty big. It's definitely not small. He is 30 years old coming off an ACL. So Robert Woods might actually be better next year than he is this year for Tennessee. But I still expect him to be a quality number 2 receiver for the Titans. In the past with the Rams, he's really been like a 1A, 1B scenario with Cooper Kupp or Brandon Cooks over the last few years for the Rams. I think maybe you see a slight decline coming off the ACL, but he's still a really good football player that does everything at a high level, and he's going to bring, a guy with plenty of experience, toughness, grit. That is the Tennessee Titan way, and having a great run blocker definitely helps Derrick Henry and their style of play. I also like that they brought in Austin Hooper, who I've discussed already. But now you've got Woods, Hooper, and you've got A.J. Brown. That's a nice kind of trio of options for Ryan Tannehill. I think that's an upgrade over just having Julio, who was hurt a lot of the year. And Woods, when he's been healthy, has stayed healthy. Not like Julio at the end of his career where he's been unreliable. And there was a lot of friction there between Julio and Mike Vrabel because of the unreliability of his injury history, and he wasn't practicing. I don't think you're going to get that with Robert Woods. The next move is Gerald Everett to the Los Angeles Chargers. I think that this is a low-key, interesting move. The Chargers definitely upgrade their athleticism at this position, and Everett in a lot of ways is pretty similar to Jared Cook. They're both fast, good athletes. I think they do a good job when they have the football. They are a tad inconsistent, but when they flash big. And that's kind of what I see from Everett and Cook the last, just between those two players. I think Everett, though, is going to be probably their starting tight end. He definitely has the potential as a complementary option to make some plays in this offense. And essentially, again, what they get here is a younger version of Jared Cook. He's an okay blocker. He's nothing special. He's got okay hands, a little bit inconsistent there, but he is a very good athlete. He's got speed. He's got athleticism. He can run routes fairly well. And I feel like just as a number 4 type option in this offense, he'll be fine. Number 4, number 5, just another complementary piece. Looks like the Chargers aren't really looking to spend big or put a lot of priority into this tight end position, but Everett is somebody that is definitely going to help them just from a depth in their weaponry perspective. I've never been the biggest fan of him as a player, but I do think that he has some upside. And I do think there's a reason he was signed to a pretty big contract in Seattle a year ago. And even though it didn't work out right away for them, I do feel like the Chargers are buying low on a potentially talented player. So you never know with that. The next one is Corey Littleton signing a 1-year deal, $2.6 million to the Panthers. Corey Littleton in the past has been one of the premier linebackers in the NFL. Thinking back to his days playing with the Rams under Wade Phillips, I thought he was a very good player, earned himself a contract with the Las Vegas Raiders, and that didn't work out. Clearly, he hasn't been very good there. But this is another buy low potential move for the Panthers. And Littleton, he's not the most physical. He's not a downhill linebacker. He's more known for his athleticism and his coverage ability. And if you can keep him clean and he's not having to go downhill and take on blocks, then I think he can be an asset in a certain niche role. I don't think he's going to be an every down linebacker, but as a depth option that has flashed in the past potential of an elite player, it's worth taking a chance on somebody like that, especially at a linebacker position that is very hit and miss. It's very inconsistent, and you never really know. Just look at Devondre Campbell. They took a 1-year deal for Devondre Campbell, a guy that has never really shown elite play, and the Packers, they get a superstar out of it. So Littleton could be the same way. You never really know. So that's what the Panthers get there. A pretty good athlete, almost like a lesser version of what they have in Shaq Thompson in a way. Zadarius Smith. This was a massive deal for the Minnesota Vikings, signing Zadarius Smith, and it paid off for Zadarius Smith to reject the Ravens' offer and to wait for a better one. So what happens here is that Zadarius Smith, just going to read this up close, $35 million deal on a 4-year contract. And the Ravens this was the initial contract that he agreed to with the Ravens. So 4 years, $35 million, right? With the upside of $50 million. So now he goes to the Vikings. He's signing with the Vikings, Zadarius Smith officially, leaving the Packers for another NFC North team, the Vikings. So this contract is 3 years, $42 million with the upside of $47 million. So 1 less year on the deal and you get way more money. So that's the right move from a contract perspective for Zadarius Smith. Now, is the fit the right fit? I'm not sure. Obviously, Zadarius Smith liked it enough to sign there. I personally think this is a great move for the Vikings. This gives them a real defensive line. You've got Dalvin Tomlinson in the middle. And now you have two edge guys in Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith. My thought is they're probably going to keep Danielle Hunter around, but bringing in somebody like Zadarius Smith is interesting because they're almost exact opposites in a way. Smith and Hunter, not opposites, I guess, but they don't play the same scheme. You don't think of Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter playing in the same defense. So if they do keep Hunter, it's going to be interesting to see how they utilize Smith and vice versa. But I'm definitely going to be keeping a track of that. And I could still see Hunter being traded maybe at the draft potentially. And they could upgrade with a younger player in the draft. I do think he could get something pretty nice because he is a premier pass rusher at a young age. If I was the Vikings, though, I would keep him around. Now, what are you getting with Zadarius Smith for the Vikings? I am a big fan of Zadarius Smith. You guys, longtime followers of me, know this. I am a big fan of his game because he's very versatile. He's kind of a quiet assassin. He goes about his business. He's very intelligent. You can see it through his play. Just very good at using his hands and being able to set up defenders or offensive linemen for certain moves, especially when he's coming from like looping around or blitzing. He's very good at these stunts and things that set him up for pressure. He's not necessarily somebody that's going to just jump off the edge and get to the quarterback, but you can use him. He can do that, right? Kind of like a Matthew Judon in a way where it's like he has that skill set and he can do that at a pretty good level, but he's best utilized in tandem with his other players on the D line where you can set him up with his athleticism and his power to be able to get to the quarterback. So he's more so one of those guys that is just a really well-rounded power and quickness for his size is immense and pretty special in that way. And he's very strong for his size because he's a little bit more of like a traditional outside linebacker. But yeah, he's a really good player, really good versus the run. I think he's probably an underrated player versus the run and a good pass rusher in a multitude of ways that is also different from Danielle Hunter, because I think Danielle Hunter is one of those guys where you just kind of line him up on the edge and he just goes. And Danielle Hunter can also move inside. I don't think Zadarius Smith necessarily can do that. He's not big enough. Hunter can move inside to D-tackle and kind of take on guys because he's so big and so long. But Zadarius Smith is more so like the outside linebacker. He can stand up. He can do those things and stuff like that. He can drop into coverage occasionally. So he's more of a hybrid type piece than a Hunter, but a Hunter is probably more of just a one-on-one pass rusher. So you've got two guys that are going to complement each other and they're very different. So I'm going to be intrigued to see how they utilize those guys. But as you can tell, I love Zadarius Smith. And I think this is a very nice signing for the Vikings that is going to make their D-line very difficult to stop this season. One Pride says, what did I think of the Lions and DJ Chark? I do think that DJ Chark is going to be great for them. I broke that down a couple videos ago, like on one of my live streams. I do think that DJ Chark is explosive. I love the signing because it's a 1-year prove-it deal, and it's a decent chunk of change, but it's not like a ton of money. And I do feel like DJ Chark has elite upside. Like he has legitimate number one wide receiver upside because of his 6'4" frame and his burst and explosion, right? He's fast. He runs like a 4.3 and he's 6'4" and he's a big play waiting to happen. So been a little bit inconsistent. I think a lot of that has been the quarterback play in Jacksonville. But I really like him as a vertical threat and as an intermediate threat. He's not somebody that's going to, go in the slot and run like 5-yard option routes. That's going to be St. Brown for you guys. But Chark's going to be able to take the top off the defense. He's going to be able to run those deep dig routes and the out routes and comebacks and things of that nature and posts and be able to exploit a defense vertically down the field with his speed and size. And I do think that they can benefit greatly from that because I don't think they have that number one prototype wide receiver. And this is potentially getting one for cheap. And maybe if he performs for you, you can extend him long term. So yeah, I do really like the DJ Chark move. Next, we've got Jacob Hollister quickly. Very minor move, but the Raiders have made a few pretty minor moves. Jacob Hollister was one of them, former tight end of, I believe he played for the Bills at one point. I don't think that was his brother. I think he played for the Bills. I know he played for Seattle, and I definitely know he played for New England. So that's really where the crossover comes, is he played for New England. And obviously, I think he actually looked his best when he played for Seattle with Russell Wilson and showed off some hybrid tight end, move tight end, slot receiver attributes that are pretty interesting. So Josh McDaniel signs him to be the Raiders' probably third option at tight end. He's going to come in there and compete. He knows the system. So somebody that's going to come in there and potentially be a receiving option for them. Not going to be a big-time blocker, but definitely can run routes and play a hybrid slot tight end type of role for the Raiders. Not sure if he's going to make the team, but somebody that could potentially give quality depth for a tight end position. Then we've got Mike Hughes signing with the Detroit Lions. This was one of my favorite signings of the last couple days. I think it slid under the radar. I was very, very surprised that the Kansas City Chiefs let Mike Hughes walk or didn't re-sign him, because I thought Mike Hughes finally got an opportunity to play in a system that is kind of tailored to his abilities as a man press corner. And I thought he played really well. And I think Pro Football Focus grading would back me up on this, as I think he was graded in the top 25 last year as a corner. But I like this move because I've always liked Mike Hughes' skill set dating back to when he was drafted as a first-round pick from the Vikings. And I like his ability to press. I like his physicality. And I like his ability to play man. Now, in Detroit, it's going to be interesting because Detroit, I do feel, is more of a zone team. So that's going to be an interesting fit in terms of how he fits in there. But obviously, playing in Minnesota and stuff like that, he has, and even in Kansas City, playing a variety of different coverages. I just wonder if he would have been better off maybe signing with a team that tends to play a higher percentage of man coverage. But I do like the player a lot, and I do like the potential in the player. Having come off his best season ever, you're signing him to a 1-year, $4 million contract. Makes a lot of sense to take a chance on a guy with a lot of upside for a position that you don't have a lot of upside at, right? I do feel like Detroit, their corners aren't terrible. I do think they've got potential with, obviously, Okudah, if he could finally find his way. I do think they have a couple younger players there that are interesting, but Mike Hughes just adds another layer of interesting to their corner position. And I definitely think adds that physicality and that ability to play man in that system. So we'll see what they do with that. But he could also play in the nickel too. Like I could see him moving into the nickel a little bit. Or maybe they want to move Okudah playing more in the nickel. I'm not sure what they're going to do. Regardless of that, I do like the move. I do like the player. And I do think it's definitely worth 1 year, $4 million. I wanted the Patriots to sign him in all honesty. So I like this move quite a bit for the Detroit Lions. Then you've got Micah Kaiser and Kyler Fackrill signing with the Raiders. 2 more minor moves for the Raiders. Kaiser, very, very minor, but played, I believe, was it 11 games for the Broncos as a backup last year. And I think he found his way to the Rams. I'm not 100% sure, but he's basically just a depth linebacker. He's got some pretty good athleticism, and he's more of a special teams player. And then you've got Kyler Fackrill, who's been like a rotation rusher his entire career, played with the Packers, played with the Giants. I think he played with the Chargers last year. Now he's on the Raiders, so he's played on multiple teams, multiple systems. I think he best fits this system under this coordinator, having played with the Giants in his past. So obviously there's some crossover, as the Giants defensive coordinator is now the Raiders defensive coordinator. So somebody that knows the system, fits the system, just a nice edge rotation player. He can do a little bit of everything: run defense, pass rush, a little bit of drop back coverage stuff. Think about like a classic Patriots outside linebacker type prototype. Just a depth rotation player that can come in handy in certain sub packages and definitely special teams depth. Then you've got the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills signed Jamison Crowder. Jamison Crowder, I've always been a fan of. I mean, dating back to his early days in Washington, I was always waiting for that season that he would really break out as like a big-time wide receiver out of the slot, and that never really truly happened. I think he's kind of always stayed at the same level. Maybe we would have seen a breakout season if he didn't play with the Jets, but he was heavily targeted with the Jets for a couple of years there, like peppered with targets when he played out of the slot position. And he's somebody that's seen a lot of volume in certain games. Like I've seen Crowder put up numbers of like 10 catches, 12 catches, 15 catches. Like he's had that type of game in New York. So his ability is mostly as a slot, definitely as a primarily slot receiver, quickness, a bit of speed. I would say he's faster than Cole Beasley. He's just as quick as Cole Beasley. And he's kind of one of those technical slot receivers that is going to be able to be effective on bubble screens, going to be effective on option routes, and going to be effective on those crossers and things out of the slot for the Buffalo Bills, playing very much a Cole Beasley-like role, but just, I think, a tad younger, a tad more fresh, a tad more willing to compete at this point. As, you know, Beasley's getting older. He kind of declined last year quite a bit. Crowder, maybe a little bit hungrier coming from the Jets, having to prove himself this year and being a compliment to Diggs, being a compliment to Davis, and those other players in the receiving core for the Bills. I think Crowder is a nice, quick receiver that also offers a bit more speed and vertical ability than Cole Beasley. And I think that complements what they're looking for from the slot as they evolve from Brian Daboll moving forward. He could be a nice complement as well to Isaiah McKenzie in splitting time and reps at that slot position for Buffalo heading into the future. So I like this move quite a bit because it's cheap. Once again, I think it's 1 year. I think it's the same as Mike Hughes' contract. I think I saw it was 1 year, $4 million. It's a lot cheaper than Cole Beasley would have been. And it's somebody that probably physically is more advanced and better than Cole Beasley, but just I don't think he mentally is the assassin that Cole Beasley was. I think Cole Beasley was a very technically sound and smart route runner and player, but I think that Crowder is definitely going to give you a little bit more explosion out of that slot spot for the Bills. So I think that's a really, really good move for Buffalo. Just when I saw it, I was just like, of course they made that move. Like, that's such a good move. Like, it just, they hit again. Like, they never miss. Like, that's just another move where I saw it immediately and I was like, that makes total sense, 100%. You move on from Beasley, you sign Crowder to a much cheaper deal. That makes all the sense in the world. So that's how I feel about that one. And then we've got the Eagles, another minor one, signing Zach Pascal, just a possession receiver who's seen some time as the Colts' number 2, number 3 option in the past. Eagles don't really have that big framed wide receiver, which is Zach Pascal, and so they bring in a wide receiver like Zach Pascal, who's got good possession skills, not a great route runner, not very explosive, not a phenomenal athlete, but big size, big frame, big hands, consistent hands, and potentially a red zone target for this offense, as they really were missing a bigger receiver in that room, which I feel like when you're creating a wide receiver room, you need to create a basketball team. So Zach Pascal adds a little bit more beef and size to that wide receiver position. Duke Johnson also went to the Bills. Duke Johnson was a very nice move, complementing, what they got in Jamison Crowder. So I really like the Bills' intentions with their offensive signings here for their free agency. They tried to get J.D. McKissic. I thought Duke Johnson played really well at the end of the year for Miami. Like, I was shocked how well he played. Last year, I couldn't understand how nobody signed him for like half the year, because he has receiving ability, which is the main part they signed him here. But he's also got like a little bit more power and toughness and in between the tackles ability than you would think, and a little bit more explosion. All right, Duke Johnson has always had a ton of talent. He's a good route runner out of the backfield. He can make people miss, and he can make like 2-yard catches into 6-yard catches, 6-yard catches into 11-yard catches. And that's exactly what you're looking for from a running back in Buffalo. They tried to get that with J.D. McKissic, who J.D. McKissic, I would say, is a more refined player in terms of his receiving ability. He's more versatile. Like, you can move him around more. You can play him outside. You can play him in the slot. You can play him in the backfield. He's more refined that way. But Duke is kind of like a better version of what they have already, which is like, he's going to be more twitchy than Devin Singletary and certainly Zach Moss in those routes. And then he's also going to be better at potentially making extra yards or exploding with the football once he gets it out of the backfield as a receiver. And then I thought he showed a lot of promise as an inside the tackles runner for Miami at the end of last year. So I think Duke is a great signing. Having missed out on J.D. McKissic, I think Duke Johnson makes a ton of sense for that extra option. And what the Bills are doing here is they're trying to add options for their short passing attack, more options for Allen, because as teams continue to play a ton of cover 2 safeties against Buffalo, that's going to leave more and more matchups underneath their defense and their coverage for these players to be able to take advantage of. But you need the players to take advantage of it, right? So upgrading from a Devin Singletary or whatever in that situation is ideal. And I think they tried to do that with J.D. McKissic, and now they're going to be able to do that with Duke Johnson. Next, we've got Matt Breida, who signed with the New York Giants, who was on the Buffalo Bills. I thought that he was going to play a bigger role, but he just didn't seem to fit what they were doing. I thought he showed flashes at certain games and stuff. He still showed his speed. He certainly still has speed. But it's interesting that his former coordinator signs him here because he didn't really get to play in that offense. But Matt Breida, he's going to bring spark, that's for sure. I mean, he's fast still. His biggest issue has always been I would say, like, his consistency, his toughness, his size as a runner, because he gets worn down and beat up very easily. So he's somebody that can take 5 to 10 touches in a game potentially for you, but I don't think any more than that at this point in his career because he is a little fragile. But as somebody that can complement the explosion of Saquon Barkley, Matt Breida could certainly do that. And he has a pretty well-rounded skill set as both a runner and a receiver. And he fits a zone running style of team. So Matt Breida, I've always been a fan of his speed, and he lands with the Giants. The next guy is Lorenzo Carter to the Atlanta Falcons. Lorenzo Carter is a player that I've wanted the Patriots to draft and to sign for the last couple of years. I've always been a fan of his game dating back to his college days. I thought Lorenzo Carter was going to be a pretty darn good player entering the NFL, so maybe I've slightly missed on that. But I still think he has a ton of potential because he's got a unique size and athleticism to him. I believe he's about 6'5", 6'6", and he can still move really well. Like, he can cover pretty well for an outside linebacker. He can definitely set the edge and get to the quarterback. So in a system like Dean Pease, you might be able to see him have his best season ever because I think Dean Pease knows how to utilize these type of players. He's going to be able to put him in the right spot with his length and his athleticism to be able to thrive as both a pass rusher and a run defender. So I think this is not a starter for Atlanta. It's a low-key move, but it is a depth signing that I think definitely helps their outside edge position. What's going on, Thomas? How you doing? I did discuss Armstead. He says, what's your percentage on Miami making the playoffs? Still think it's an uphill climb. I will just quickly say about Armstead is I think it's a great move. He's an amazing player. I think he's been one of the 5 best left tackles in the NFL, over the past 5, 6, 7 years. He's getting a little bit older, but as I said earlier, he's somebody that could play for a long time because he has that freakish athleticism that matches up with guys that have played for a long time at this position, like Jason Peters. So he's just that good where I think he can last a long time. His only problem has been injuries. It's the only problem he's ever had has been fighting through injuries. I don't even know if it's necessarily missing games, but fighting through consistent injuries, which has kept him at his peak all the time. But great player. I think he'd be great in any system on any team. I actually predicted him to go to you guys, so obviously I think it makes sense and it fits. So yeah, love the move. Now, in terms of them making the playoffs, I think I talked about this with you before, but I think it's going to be tough for me to understand and predict how Mike McDaniel is going to shift with this team from Brian Flores. I'm not sure if there's going to be if there's going to be positive or negative from that. And I do think you guys are more talented. There's no question. I think you've added wide receivers, offensive linemen, especially running backs, playmakers, and Tua's in his, third year now. Defensively, I think you're pretty strong. There's no question. So you've got more talent than last year, but I do question the AFC is so strong. I don't think I didn't put you in the playoffs in my AFC tier list. I think I had them in the top 10. I had them second in the AFC East, but I didn't have them in the playoffs. It's just such a tough AFC right now. I mean, there's only one team that I think sucks in the AFC, the Texans. That's it. So the Dolphins have a chance, but there's still a lot of questions. I kind of got to see the product on the field for me, and I got to see if Tua can take that step forward. If Tua can take the step forward, and this is probably what they're looking for to see, because they've surrounded them with these players now. The offensive line is going to be better. The receivers are going to be better. Can he take that jump? And if he can, then they can make the playoffs. Is Crowder on a new team yet? Asked Jeremy. Yes, I broke it down with the Bills. I think that's a great signing for the Bills. I think you could probably tell me, Jeremy, what you think, but what do you think? Do you think he's been a little bit underrated there on the Jets? Edgar asks, the Raiders make the playoffs next year. Edgar, and everybody out there, I broke down every AFC team, kind of like my quick synopsis for them and what I think moving forward this year, and I did a very early projection of the playoffs, basically, with my tier rankings for both conferences. So if you haven't checked that out, go check that out after this video, because I put the top 7 in the top 2 tiers, and that will basically give you my predictions for the playoffs. I do have the Raiders as that, flirting with playoffs territory. They're like that 7 to 9 range for me, and I did put them at the playoffs, actually, because I'm kind of biased. I'm not going to lie. I like the Raiders. I was cheering for them all last year, and I like Josh McDaniels a lot. Josh McDaniels is my guy. I want to see him succeed. So I definitely am a little bit biased, but I think they've built a really good team. Specifically, I think their offense is going to be stellar. Stellar. I don't think they're going to be worried for points whatsoever. I mean, McDaniel's calling the plays. They're going to have a stronger running game, I think, because they're going to have that McDaniels run game with Jakob Johnson coming in as a fullback. Is going to give you more power element to your game. Josh Jacobs as the runner might have his best season efficiency-wise this year. The offensive line still needs work, but those receivers, man. I mean, Renfrow is the best short area receiver in the league. You've got Devontae Adams. You've got Bryan Edwards. You signed Demarcus Robinson. You've got Darren Waller. I mean, that's going to be so difficult for defenses to defend. I think Derek Carr is still underrated. And your defense, I think coaching is going to be better. And I think the pass rush is going to be insane. And I also like some of the moves you've made in the secondary. Some of the under-radar names like Anthony Everett and even Rocky Sin's not terrible. I wish they would get a number 1 signing, a number 1 corner, but I do like some of the moves they've made, and they've been very aggressive. I appreciate that. Do we have any signings left? Jaron Reid signed with the Packers. I do think Jaron Reid has been a little bit overrated. I'm just going to be honest with you, Packers fans. I think Jaron Reid has been overrated the last few years. I think we saw that last year. He put up a ton of sack numbers and stats with Seattle, but that didn't transfer to impacting the Chiefs. Yeah, he was just kind of invisible with the Chiefs. He didn't really do his role of what we thought was complementing Chris Jones. Now, his skill is to rush the passer. So from that standpoint, I think that he is an upgrade from what they have, because when you look at it, you've got Kenny Clark, right? He's your only interior pass rusher of any sort of, anything. You've got Rashawn Gary on the edge and Preston Smith and Wendy Merciless on the edge. Those guys are good, but you need the bigger guys in the middle. And I do think Jaron Reid in the middle on those like passing downs can help complement Kenny Clark getting to the quarterback. So from that standpoint, from a low-key standpoint, I like that move. Now, if you're looking for him to be an every down player, I'm not sure I'm a huge fan because I do think that he struggles sometimes against the run, and I do feel like he just hasn't been that good from a down-to-down perspective. He's better when he's on lesser snaps, and you can get the most out of him as an explosive pass rusher that way. So that's my opinion on Jaron Reid. Vernon Butler to the Raiders as well. Another small move to the Raiders. Raiders have been signing all these kind of low-key free agents, a very Patriot-like formula there for McDaniels and company. Vernon Butler's kind of like been a bust sort of throughout his career. I believe he was a second-round pick, maybe even a first-round pick for the Panthers like years ago. But he's a depth D lineman. Now, I will say about this, he has flashed athleticism and like a pass rush ability. I've never seen him in this system before, so I wonder how he'll fit in this system. He's played in like Buffalo system and Carolina system, like very different from what the Raiders are going to be doing. So that is something to look forward to. If you're a Vernon Butler stan or whatever, which there's probably none of you, or you're a Raiders fan, maybe you can hope that a scheme change for Vernon Butler, somebody that was highly drafted, could get the best out of him. And then the final move I got on my notes is Demarcus Robinson signing with the Raiders. So the first thing that came to my mind with this is just that Demarcus Robinson is going to tell the Raiders Andy Reid's entire playbook, and that's basically his sole purpose of being on the team. And I don't know if I'm really even laughing about that. Like, Demarcus Robinson isn't a bad player, don't get me wrong. I think he'll probably be their fourth receiver, I think. So he serves a purpose, and he's a veteran. He's made plays. He's been on a good team. Seems to be a pretty good teammate and all that stuff. Like, he's never caused a problem. Good in the slot, mostly. So he could serve as like a backup to Hunter Renfrow in a way. So he's not going to get a ton of snaps or anything like that. But he's a depth receiver, and he's somebody that has a lot of intelligence on Mahomes, the Chiefs offense, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, what they do. So, I mean, that's very valuable for a new coaching staff in a division. I know that that's not the primary reason. Obviously, he's a football player that they signed him for. But that type of intelligence is certainly a factor in a arms race in the AFC West. So, those are my takeaways for the last few days of NFL free agency. I haven't done the individual days just because there haven't been enough signings overall for me to really like grasp doing a full live stream for it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this rundown of all those signings and trades that went down. And if you did, make sure that you do Gronk Spike that like button. Tomorrow will be the quarterback tiers list. I will be going live for that. That'll be very interesting. I'm sure I'll get some love, but also a lot of hate for that. And I'm definitely going to tell you what I think. I'm not going to hold back whatsoever on your quarterbacks. Now, it's not going to be my full-on rankings because I like to save my rankings for a little bit later in the offseason, but it will be tiers because you guys have really enjoyed those tier rankings. So I'm going to continue to do those as long as you guys continue to like them. Thomas says, all these moves in the AFC West, are the Chiefs still the favorites to win the division next year? I don't think so, in my opinion. I'd probably put them second. I think the Chargers are the best team in the division. Just looking at it, I think Herbert's elite. Staley, I like a lot. Second year, too, which is nice. Offensive line, I think will be just as good, if not better, than last year. I think they could add in the draft. Right side is a problem. But you've got like Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and Austin Eckler. They added Gerald Everett. Defensively, I think they're going to be so much better. So much better. Khalil Mack, Sebastian Joseph Day, and Joey Bosa's unreal. Derwin James and JC and Asante Samuel. They've got the most complete team. I get it. They're the Chargers. They disappoint a lot, but they're the most complete team. And they played the Chiefs really well last year. They should have beat them twice. So I think that the Chargers are legit. The The Broncos, I'm not sure. I question the coaching. I love Russell Wilson, obviously. He's a 9-win quarterback, no matter if he's on the worst team in the NFL. And they've got things that I like, but I think they might be a little bit overrated. I think the Raiders are still there and competitive, but they do definitely have questions on defense. So I think I put the Chiefs second for now because I think their offense gives them a really good floor, but I am concerned about their defense. Their defense looks pretty thin at this point in the offseason, but we'll see how they improve that. But they'll definitely make the playoffs, no question about that. Now, he says, can't wait for Tua, quarterback 32. I'm not quite sure I'm going to put him that low, but don't expect him to be high. All right. Odd Big King says, I think Juju is what the Chiefs needed. Yes, I really like that move. I will say I really like that move. And I also like the Justin Reid move. Methan says, what do I think about the Vikings and Zadarius Smith? I answered that a little bit earlier. I got to run now, though. But I appreciate everybody joining in on this live stream. And we will be back tomorrow for another one. So make sure that you're tuned in for that. Appreciate everybody. Appreciate all the support, guys. Thank you so much for all the support. And make sure that you check out everything in the description, from the TikTok that we're doing now to Instagram, Twitter, and Discord. If you want to become a deeper BLVer, make sure you check out that Discord because it's just always wild and fun. So thanks, guys, for watching. It's Mitch. Peace.